Hey everybody, what is going on? I'm Juan, joined alongside Rhino and Keith, and we're back with the roundtable. Of course, there is no actual table. Instead, we are in the webosphere, we're in the internet, and today we're going to be talking about WWE 2K16 and the wishlist, because for whatever reason, neither one of the three of us got WWE 2K15. So just to really give some context about that, Keith first, why don't you have WWE 2K15?
Well, there was a couple of reasons. It basically came down to I didn't own a console that could play it. If you listen back to the podcast, I said, like, if it came out on the PC, I would buy it in a heartbeat. But once I got the consoles, it just came down to a fact that there was a lack of content in those games. It was a solid structure, but no content, and it didn't really interest me.
What about you, Ryan?
Yes, I heard a lot about the PS3 version, which is, I don't have any of the newer gen systems. The PS3 version was supposed to be largely inferior to the next gen version. So I really didn't think it was worth it. And I kind of just got 2K14 over the summer. So I was still having fun with that. And I really didn't think it was necessary to pick up the next one.
Yeah, for everybody watching that checks out Fight Night, you know we have 2K14, and it's funny because we actually avoided getting 2K14 for like the longest time until we saw that the price dropped, there were some features that were added, but with 2K15, we read all this information like, yeah, graphically it was a lot better, but the features weren't really there, you know, the Create a Superstar features were way more limited. So we are here to really talk about what we want for the next game. What would really make us get 2K16. So starting out, I'm going to take it to Keith.
All right.
What's in your list?
It honestly just comes down to content because, like I said, they have a very solid structure of a game now. Now it's just a matter of filling that structure with actual content, like more match types. One thing that I did like in WWE 2K15 was the whole the very obscure storylines. Like they just released the Mark Henry Hall of Pain and Christian storyline. I'd like to see more things like that. But yeah, more content.
What about you, Mr. McNulty?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to just expanding off of what they've done. If they could implement everything that was in 2K14, all the extra, create a superstar entrance types, all of that stuff, everything back into 2K15 with, the new gameplay of 2K15 and the new story mode that they have there, that is a great start. It's really just came down to the fact that they had to build that new foundation for 2K15, so they had to take a lot of that out. So it's all about now just kind of adding all of those features in because they're off to a great start with that My Career mode. It felt a little too empty, but if they can expand on that, I think the game would be a lot better.
Yeah, so we can basically agree that let's not add any more new content. Let's actually get some of the stuff that we already had. The fact that you can't even create Divas in 2K15 is kind of crazy. So maybe adding those things. One thing that I really mentioned is a more creative superstar slot, because in 2K15 there are only 25. And keep in mind that whenever you edit a superstar, so if you use like a superstar threats or something for like John Cena or something, that takes up a slot. So we're talking that in a very, very quick amount of time, it can take up all of that. But obviously keep the PNG thing, so you can basically import some images, so you can make a custom t-shirt that looks just like the real life version. Now, question. So you brought up the my career mode. Sorry, Ryan. Yeah, you brought up that mode. And yeah, a lot of people seem to complain that although it's nice in concept, it's sort of limited. So what do you think could really benefit adding to that? Because at the end of the day, it basically seems to be story, match, like a little bit of a segment, match, but there's no depth into it.
I think they need to expand on the whole face heel thing. I mean, there is a part in that My Career mode. I've only had a chance to, briefly play the game, but things you did in the match could make you more of a babyface or more of a heel. But it was really you didn't really know what exactly you had to do to kind of be more of a heel or whatever. And they kind of need to maybe more expand on like things where you could go with storylines. It seemed like a crapshoot. From what I read people playing, it's like they would play as a babyface and it would just end their career after a year. But then some kid played as a heel and had like 3 seasons or whatever. So maybe kind of expand on, how it works, what I need to do certain things or to get to certain places, because it's not all that apparent right now. But it is, a step in the right direction.
It definitely has a lot of cool stuff. And taking it to you, Keith, we talk about features that have been there before that are sort of there but could be better. But I don't know if you ever played Tony Hawk's Underground. These games that basically have basically a game mechanic that you think to yourself, how can you work on a different story mode with such a limited thing? What do you think they could add in terms of gameplay? Like not just storylines, not just cutscenes, but from a gameplay standpoint that could sort of switch things up in the story mode.
In the story mode, maybe just making the matches feel a little more cinematic, if that's the right word. So they started going in that direction in 2K15, where you could like crawl around the ring and the referee would run towards the actual pin instead of just being in a random place in the ring. But maybe adding that, like maybe in the middle of a match, there's a predetermined cutscene where something happens, and then it just kind of makes it feel all organic and maybe more TV-like.
Well, they sort of do have that for some things, but they've kind of had that in all the previous games, which is if you pin somebody, it'll cut to a cutscene, and then you're basically forced to do something.
But what I'm saying is, like, don't have it go to a cutscene. Just bring it like in the engine, like in the actual match itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, figure out a gameplay way of making all those cutscenes like we actually get to do that, because I think that's a big complaint with most games. Like, oh, that is amazing. If only I could have actually hit a couple buttons and had that happen.
Indeed.
Another thing that I know we've all sort of had this pet peeve. What about the loading times? Is there anything that you guys would love to see change from that?
I mean, faster loading times are better.
Yeah, the loading times in the creative mode are absolutely atrocious. And there's some other things that they definitely need to fix with 2K15 in the next edition. Very simple things that you would think would be, pretty inexcusable to ever be released in a game. The create an entrance mode in 2K15, at least in the PS4 version, it doesn't cut to the crowd in between animations on a custom entrance. So it literally has these super choppy animations when you're going from, if you have Mark Henry stage entrance and maybe Dolph Ziggler's ramp entrance, it's just immediately you're going to see him like flash forward or backward and go into the next animation, and it looks awful. So that's one thing that just completely needs to be fixed, along with just how limited a lot of the creative mode stuff is with like tight designs and facial hair and things like that, and hair itself. Just more expansion on that.
Before we close out, I got 2 things I want to sort of, not quick fire, but quick fire at the same time, which is number 1. So you saw that this game definitely took a bigger direction into the realistic type of wrestling, if you can call it that. Do you want them to keep going that way? Do you want them to head to an arcadey way, or do you think there's a way that they can sort of do both at the same time?
I want them to keep going with the realistic match types. That is the thing I probably like most about 2K15 on PS4 is, you have that stamina meter, but it's not as terrible as it was in maybe 2007 SmackDown versus Raw and things like that.
Horrible.
It's actually a lot better. It makes a lot of sense that if you're out of energy, you can't do a finisher, and that when you do a rest hold, it actually gets you some stamina back. So there's, you feel like you're working a real match. So they definitely should expand on that, because that was the part I liked the most about the game.
And I'd like them to find some sort of middle ground in the like realism versus arcadey style, because I'd still like it to be fun in like the 1,000th match I play, and maybe the realism gets old and boring after a while. So middle ground.
That's true. It doesn't always have to be in a super serious way. But then the other thing is, how do we add something new. So like you said, create an entrance, Ryan. What if you could actually create an animation for your entrance? Is there a possibility? Because they've already added the PNG stuff, so you can add custom logos and all that, but how awesome would it be if they really just took full control? Because they once had Create a Taunt like 4 or 5 SmackDowns ago, so this is not something that hasn't been done before.
That's for create an entrance with animations. I feel like there's just too many variables in an entrance for it to look smooth. I know even SmackDown 2 had like create a wind taunt or something like that, and it just ended up not looking very good. I like what they did with create a finisher, but even then it's hard for it to look smooth sometimes. So I feel like that would be just asking for a complete mess. It would be cool, maybe someday in the future when we all have our own motion capture suits or something like that. That would be cool, but until then,
maybe Kinect could have sort of done something with that. I don't know.
That would be cool for Kinect. Until then, though, I think it would be a total mess and way too hard to configure.
But at the same time, you got to wonder, there's going to be some animations that people make that you don't really want.
It would get pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But to summarize, so we got about 7 things that we can all agree on. Number 1, add the 2K14 content that's not there. Number 2, add CW slots. Number 3, just more variety. Match types, they took way too many of them away. Number 4, define the heels and the faces in the story mode. Number 5, obviously the load times. Number 6, fix the create an entrance mode. Just bring it back. And number 7, keep the realism, but don't go too far. And for those watching, we want to get your top 5, your top 10 wish list for WWE 2K16. So make sure you leave that below. If you like this video, leave a comment, thumbs up. And then for everything else, hey, we got a podcast, right? That is a thing that happens. When does that happen?
It is.
Tuesday.
It happens every
Tuesday. So until next time, for Ryan and Keith, these 2 guys that are between me, we'll be back next time with many more roundtables right here on Byte That. Thanks for watching.